To start today's project, you're going to need 2 pairs of pliers. I prefer to use Xuron pliers, and today I'm going to be using a chisel nose plier, and you can see this edge that is cut to the side. This is the 487 chisel nose plier. You can also use flat nose pliers if you prefer to. I'll also be using the 90-degree bent nose plier, and you can see that these have a nice bend, and you can use either the curved side when it's real easy to grab onto things, or the tip side, and you can see that this little curve allows you to get into small spaces very easily, grab on, so that you can manipulate whatever you're working with your dominant hand. I also have a paper clip out here. I like to use paper clips to start my chain projects because it's very easy to tell what my beginning end is, and it slides on and off the paper clip easily. You can also start your project, if you prefer to, on the Lobster Clasp, and that is also going to be used today. I like for this project to use the largest size Lobster Clasp that I carry, just because it's a little bit easier to get the bracelet on and off when you wear it. We'll also be using 18 gauge 5/32 jump rings. I have these in both rose gold and gunmetal. I've pre-opened all of the gunmetal rings, and I've pre-closed all of the rose gold rings before I started. I'm also going to be using a 19 gauge 3/16 jump ring and Farfalle beads. So the Farfalle beads are very much like a berry bead or a peanut bead. They're just a little bit larger. So in order to work with these holes, the 19 gauge, which is only 1 millimeter thick, is going to accommodate a lot more beads than had we used the same size in an 18 gauge, which would have been a 1.2 millimeter thickness. This is only 1 millimeter thickness, so it's going to work a lot better with the beads and accommodate more of them. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. As I said before, I'm going to go ahead and pre-open and pre-close my 18 gauge 5/32 jump rings. I'm also going to pre-open the 19 gauge 3/16 jump rings for myself. So to pre-open, if I take the jump ring, and this is my dominant hand, is my right hand, I'm going to grab the jump ring at around 3 o'clock. And then I come in with my pliers, and I'm going to use this curved edge, and I'll grab from around 6 or 7 o'clock all the way up to 11 o'clock. And then I'm going to push away from me with my left hand, and I'm going to pull towards me with my right hand. If I was left-handed, I would be doing this the opposite way. I would grab at 9 o'clock with my flat or chisel nose pliers, and I would grab on the other side in this way, and I would probably push away on my right side and pull back with my left. But I'm going to do these right-handed because I am right-handed, and it'll be easier to show you that way. Okay, so that is one open jump ring, and this moves along very quickly once you get going. But I'm also going to show you that I have an optional tool that you can use, and that is a jump ring opener. So the jump ring opener has a bunch of different hole sizes in it, and I want to use these ones over here are for 18 and 19 gauge jump rings. So all I do is put this on my finger, and you'll notice that my hand is facing straight out and that the groove is in towards the center of my body. And then this time I'm not going to use the bent nose pliers. I'm simply going to grab the jump ring at 3 o'clock. I'm going to stick the jump ring into the groove, and I'll be covering the same area as I was before, which is from about 11 o'clock down to 7 o'clock, and I can simply pull back and push forward a little bit with my left hand that has the ring tool on it. These are very easy to use. And you can see that this frees up your left hand to pick up rings in between each time. It makes you much faster. Now for pre-closing. I have my rose gold jump rings here. And I'm going to use my pliers to close these. So I'm going to be pushing inward at the same time I'm doing the back and forth motion. And I'm just going to try and make this ring as seamless as possible. Another thing you can do if you feel like there's a little bit of tilt or slant to the ring is you can turn it around the opposite way and go through this procedure again. You never want to open and close anodized aluminum jump rings dramatically and work them a whole lot back and forth, because they can break if you do that. That will weaken the wire and make them very easy to break. So I'll show you just one more. And notice that I'm pushing in, I'm almost letting these overlap. The prongs of the jump ring will overlap just slightly, and I should be able to almost hear them or feel them rub against each other as I close if I'm going to get a perfect closure. So that's how we went ahead and pre-opened and pre-closed our jump rings. It's very easy to do, and if you do all the hard work before you start, then you don't have to worry about it as you're making your project. Okay, so to get this project started, I'm going to go ahead and use one of the 18 gauge 5/32 in gunmetal, and then I'll be using another one, and then I'm going to need 2 of the rose gold. So this is just to get me started. Now after these 2 rose gold, I'm going to go ahead and pull out one more 18 gauge 5/32 gunmetal, and then we'll be adding on, I'll put these way out here, one of the 19 gauge beads with 2 beads. Okay? So the very first ring, we're going to go ahead and we're going to attach this to our paper clip. Okay, that's just like when we pre-close. We want to make sure that this is smooth and even. You can turn the ring around if you need to, and make sure that this closure is perfect. Okay, so in our next step, I'm going to take my second open 18 gauge 5/32 gunmetal ring. I'm going to pass through the one I already put on, and I'm going to pick up 2 new ones. You don't have to turn your jump ring around every time, but it gives you a slightly different angle, so if you feel like the ring isn't perfectly straight, if you turn it around, you can usually get it that way. Okay, so we have 2 gunmetals and 2 rose gold. So the 2 rose gold are just hanging off of this. Now what I want to do is I'm going to pick up my next gunmetal ring. I'm pass through the 2 rose gold. Okay, so you'll notice that this ring and this ring match each other in direction, and then this first gunmetal ring and the rose gold match each other in their direction. So I want to work with this ring back here that matches the pair of closed rings that I just put on. And what I'm basically going to do is, you can see I went through this ring from going away from me, and when I pass through this ring back here, I also want to pass through it going away from me. So that means I need to let the work kind of fold back on itself so that I can reach. And if you want to think of it, you're kind of twisting the paper clip a little. But you definitely want to hold the work out straight like I did and make sure everything is moving in the correct directions before you start this particular step. That way you'll be going in the right direction. Okay. I'm going to turn this around. This ring is being slightly challenging to close, so if I turn it around I can grab it at different angles so that it'll close more easily for me. Again, I don't always have to do that. And you can see we have our first little barrel part here. So the two rose gold rings are going around the eye of the two 18 gauge 5/32 rings. So when I refer to an eye, what I mean by that is if I have two rings side by side, see how there is a little eye where these overlap? That's what would be referred to as the eye, is that small intersection point in between. Okay, so now as promised, we're going to use our 19 gauge jump ring in between, 19 gauge 3/16. I'm going to pick up a bead. Okay, and that slid right on. And then we're going to pass through the eye. This is why I just went through this explanation of it. So we're going to go through the eye of the two gunmetal rings that are here. So really what it means is I'm passing through both of those rings, but I'll end up passing through where they intersect. This first one is always the hardest. It's a little, we don't have much of a chain going yet, so that one's always a little hinky. Okay, and I'm going to put on a second farfalle bead. And that one, the hole is too small, so pick another one. You won't have to throw too many farfalle beads off to the side, but it will happen sometimes. Okay, and there we have it. So now we're going to start a new row. So this 19 gauge 3/16 ring now serves as what this very first ring we put on behaved as. So we're going to pretend that this is just plain without beads. And we're going to go ahead and take another gunmetal. We'll pick up two rose gold, and then we're going to need another gunmetal. And these are the 18 gauge 5/32 rings. And then of course after that, way over here, I'll put two beads. Let's get that one bead out of the way. Put it way in the back there so I won't try and use it again. Okay, so I'm going to pass through between the beads. So see how I split those as I did this. And then I'm going to pick up two rose gold closed, pre-closed jump rings. And then I will close my jump ring. Okay. And then when I pick this one up, this is where we're going to be doing some things. Okay. So again, see how I'm holding this so I can see that the rose gold and this jump ring with the beads match how they're laying, and the two gunmetal ones are laying in the same direction as well. So what I want to do is I want to feed this back so that I'm moving away from myself as I pass through that ring with the beads. Okay, and we close. And now you can see we have another barrel. So then, as promised, we're going to go ahead to the beading section. And I like this new method that I'm using because it's very easy to get the beads on when you do it this way. I have another way of doing barrel weave where I go around the eye, and I pre-close the gunmetal, and I have the rose gold open, but because we're beading on this method is much easier. It's good to know both ways so that the materials you use, you can decide to have either your closed rings on the outside or on the inside. So it's always good to know all the ways to do any particular weave. Okay, and there's our second row of Farfalle beads. Now we're going to pull out, once again, the gunmetal, 2 rose gold, another gunmetal. We'll put those away in the back. All our bad beads, you can set aside a little dish for yourself to put the bad beads in. You can always use those with the needle and thread. If the hole runs a little bit smaller, you can use those with a different medium. Or with an even smaller jump ring. You can add them to some little charm bracelets or shaggy loop bracelets or something like that. They may work with an even smaller size jump ring. Okay, so I'm going to take my 18 gauge 5/32 ring. Once again, I'm going to pass through in between the beads. We're going to pick up 2 rose gold jump rings. My beads are running away from me. It happens. Okay, I didn't get the best closure on that one, so I'm going to turn it around. Approach it from the opposite direction. Okay, and then we're going to come in with our second gunmetal. Again, we're going to hold this out for ourselves. Look at the configuration. The rose gold and this ring are the same direction, and these 2 gunmetal go in the same direction. So we're going to turn it this way. So you can see why I look at it that way, to make sure that as I'm trying to come into this ring back here, that I have everything in line with itself before I do it. That's going to make everything a lot easier. And sometimes the beads like to get in the way. That's totally okay. Happens. Just take a minute. Just relax and move slowly through this. You'll get faster as you practice more. Okay, again, shooting for that perfect closure. And there we go. Okay, so as you know, our next step is just going to be to add the 19 gauge again with our 2 beads. We're just going to continue to make this the length that we need it to be, and then I will be back to show you how to finish this off very easily with our lobster clasp. So I've reached the length that this chain needs to be to fit my wrist. And for the final row, you notice I haven't added the row that has the beads on it. So to finish this, I'm just going to take one of the 18 gauge 5/32 jump rings, and instead of using that 19 gauge, I'm going to use the 18 gauge. And I'm just going to pass through here just like I would have the jump ring that had the beads on it. And then we're just going to pick up our lobster clasp and put that on. It's usually very easy to end chainmail because it's generally just a matter of a link at the end and you're done attaching the clasp. So whether you have 1 hole, 2 hole, 3 hole or more, you know, it's usually just attaching it with a jump ring. Now on the other side, I still have my paper clip, and this is where you can see why I use paper clips, because I can just slide this right off. Now it's gone. Okay, and I have, you can see that that first 18 gauge 5/32 acts as a nice clip for our lobster clasp. So this is going to very easily hook on. Okay, but if you want to, you can always add an additional jump ring to the end that will dangle a little bit more. Okay, so that's your choice. That's just personal preference of how you would like your end to be. I like mine to be integrated into the chain really well so that the clasp section is as small as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with this, but as I said, you can do this any way you'd like to. So this is our finished bracelet, and I hope you really enjoyed this project. I think this one's lovely. It looks like an oil slick because of the crystal slipperette Farfalle beads that we were using and the mix of the metals that are very neutral. So this is really wearable. A little bit more to the darker, more gothic side, I think, because of the dark gunmetal and the iridescence in it, but the rose gold definitely lightens it up and brings out all the shimmer and shine that's in this particular project. So I hope you really enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much.